Welcome, everybody. I am Shalita O'Neill, founder and CEO of Farsight Change Network Foundation. So happy that you can join us today for our hashtag alumni success speaker series. We have, as you know, we have our monthly webinars every third Tuesday of the month, and we bring on a different alumni speaker to talk about different topics. So whether it's professional topics, personal topics, how can you get to the next level in your career? How can you prepare for, the taking the next step, right? So today I'm excited, and let me tell you why I'm excited. Hold on, let me get my notes out, y'all. Today I'm excited because I have Rachel Barrett Dulcine, right? Today joining us. She's going to be leading us in a webinar titled Ain't No Stopping You Now, Strategies for Conquering Your Networking Fears. Now, we all know this is the time of year where everybody's going to start having their events, their holiday parties, and people are going to be networking and schmoozing. And not all of us are outgoing, extroverts. I'm an introverted extrovert. And, Rachel, what, introverted extrovert? So, sometimes you need some tips on how can you move in these rooms in a way that's comfortable to you, but you can still get your networking done. You can still make some awesome connections, right? So I'm so happy that Rachel has agreed to join us because she is accomplished in her own right. She is CEO of her own company. And I want to make sure I give you the name of her company. CEO of Compass Consulting and Training Solutions, LLC. But that's not the only hat that she wears. She's also an author. She is also a serial entrepreneur. She is also a member of the FCN Foundation board. She is a wife. She is a mother. She is an alumni. She is a powerhouse, okay? So I'm happy to have her here to join. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Rachel. You take it away.
Thank you, Shalita. What an introduction. I feel like a superstar.
You are.
So I am excited to be here to talk about networking today. And I'm hoping that the tips and strategies that I talk about today will be very helpful to you. They have been extremely helpful for me. So today's session is mostly going to come from my own life and my own experiences with networking. I think that's the best way to learn and to teach is from your own personal experience. So this is not going to be highfalutin mumbo jumbo stuff. This is going to be, let me pause. Highfalutin mumbo jumbo has its place, just not today. And so I'm just going to give you some practical things that you can do to network and to be successful at networking. I do not like networking. I have to do it though, but it's not one of those activities that I enjoy. So I have to prepare myself, and I have to go in with a mindset, which we're going to talk about during our session today. All right, so you guys ready? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get going. All right, so first probably I should hit share screen. Here we go. And yay, can you guys see my screen? I hope so. And all right, so Ain't No Stopping You Now. I know you guys are probably familiar with that song. And so I'm going to talk about specifically 4 strategies for conquering your networking fears. I didn't want to overwhelm everyone when you watch this webinar later, or if you're on live now. So I'm just going to give you 4 practical strategies that you can start implementing today, as soon as you watch this webinar, or as soon as you get off this webinar. So the first thing we're going to talk about are 3 different types of personalities. Now, these are going to be just overview. This is not all inclusive. This is just a summary or overview of 3 typical personalities. You have to understand who you are and which personality you are in order to conquer this networking arena, right? So first we have an introvert, and introverts are normally thinkers. So they're inward turning, they're very much shy. They're not really the ones to talk about their feelings or talk about what mood they're in or anything like that without being kind of drawn into a conversation or without you pulling it out of them. They are not really good with external stimulation. So as you can see in the characteristics, they are normally people who like spending time alone. They're not necessarily loners, even though they can be. An extreme form of being an introvert can be being a loner. They're normally, like I said, thinkers. So they're always talking to themselves in their head, encouraging themselves. They're normally creatives. It's very hard for them to shut off that inner monologue. And I know all about that at nighttime because I'm a creative. That's very difficult for me to do. When they're around other people, they feel drained, tired, or they can even feel sick after attending an event or socializing. So if you find that after you attend an event, it doesn't matter if it's a family event, an event with friends, an event for work. If you find yourself drained and tired and even not feeling well, you might actually be an introvert. You feel lonelier in a crowd than when you're alone. So once again, remember the introverts are very much introspective. They have no problem spending time alone. As a matter of fact, they prefer to be alone. So when they're in a crowd of people, they may actually feel like they're more alone than when they're by themselves. You feel like you're faking when you have to network, when you have to speak, when you have to teach, when you have to get up in front of the room and perform. You feel like you're faking it. You don't feel like you're being sincere to yourself, and it's very difficult for you to do those things. And you have absolutely no desire to be the center of attention. So you're the person who's behind the scenes. You're the person who goes into a networking event and you're working the edge of the room. You're not working to the center of the room. You're on the edge of the room when you're going from place to place. Or you might actually stand in that one spot for the entire networking event. You also don't like being called out. So if the host or someone says, "Hey, Rachel, I see you standing over there. Come up here for a minute." You're actually mortified. You want to draw into yourself, and it's very difficult and a very uncomfortable situation for you to be in. So if any of this sounds like you are probably an introvert. Now, let me also put a disclaimer. I should have said this before. This is not a diagnosis of your personality or anything like that. This is just kind of like an overview. There are actually personality tests that you can take that will clearly identify where you are, but for the sake of this particular webinar, this is just info, right? So if you recognize any of these characteristics or the definition sounds like you, then you're most likely an introvert. And there's nothing wrong with being an introvert. We'll talk about that later. Extrovert, extremely friendly, the social butterflies, overly expressive, dramatic, all the drama. They always bring the fire and the wind and the snow and the sleet, right? So extrovert. So extroverts are normally the energy bringers. They live for social events. They live for networking events. They are energized by it. When they leave, they are hyped up. They are ready to go to the next one. Lots of times extroverts will do serial events. So I have extroverts in my network where they'll have 3 or 4 events on a Saturday. And when they're done with their last event, they're still like, "Oh, you want to go for drinks?" "No, ma'am. No, sir. I was done after number 1. Right? We'll talk about knowing yourself in a second. Extroverts like to solve problems through discussion. So they're the ones who always got to talk stuff through. So if you're an introvert and something happens, let's say at work, you go to your desk, you're thinking about it, you're processing it. It might take you a minute to respond to an email, or it might even take you a minute to go and talk to the person about it. An extrovert, automatically, something happens in the office, they're coming to your desk and let's talk about this now. Right? They like to solve problems that way. They're normally described as friendly and unapproachable. An introvert normally, obviously, you may often hear people say you don't seem like you're friendly or you don't seem approachable, right? Because of how you present yourself. You're an introvert, you're in a networking event, you're standing in the corner of the room, and not that you're not friendly, but that's not how you present yourself. Extroverts, they're always open and willing to share. They are the TMI people. Too much information, right? They're the ones who are normally, they talk about everything. They normally have hardly any filter, especially when they're around friends and people they're comfortable with. They get comfortable very easy in groups and in crowds. They love to talk. And they're a social butterfly. So at networking events, if you have a friend that's an extrovert and you go with them to networking event, they're the one who's dragging you, kicking and screaming in your head, of course, to meet this person and meet that person. Hey, this is my friend Rachel. Hey, this is my friend Rachel. So right, they're dragging you around the room. God forbid they're the host. and you're with them, then it's, hey, I want you to meet my friend Rachel. And then they go to tell all the things you've done, all the amazing things. And even though it's amazing, inward, you're like, oh my goodness, you want to crawl under a rock, right? So extrovert, if this sounds like you, and like I said, it's not a diagnosis, but most likely you are an extrovert. Then we have me.
Yes.
Probably Shalita as well, or probably some of you may recognize this. Where you're an introverted extrovert. So personalities fall along a spectrum. Introvert is the extreme on one end, extrovert is the extreme on the other end. So there are folks who are purely introverts and purely extroverts. And then there are folks who fall along the spectrum in different ways. Introverted extrovert falls somewhere in the middle. So it's someone who shares the characteristics of both personality traits. So they're introverted in some ways and they're extroverted in some ways. Hence, we have introverted extroverts, right? So that's where this particular personality falls. Now, the extreme on either end, although you can experience feelings that are of either extreme. Most times, an introverted extrovert is mostly swings towards introversion versus extroversion as well. All right, so introverted extrovert, which a lot of folks probably fall somewhere in this middle. So you find people to be fascinating and exhausting. So you love, when you go to events, once you finally warm up, right? Because one of the characteristics on here, you need to warm up in social situations. So once you warm up and you start talking to someone, you find it fascinating. You ask questions, you engage in conversation. I mean, people might think you're an extrovert, but you can, by the time you finish talking to that one person, like you need to like take your drink and go sit in the corner. Or go find a quiet place because you're exhausted. You're like, okay, I need a break before the next person, right? You can be energized by some people or environments and then exhausted by others. And sometimes it can be the same event. Why do I have two periods there? Forgive that. Anyway, sometimes it could be in the same event. So you can find yourself talking to different people and talk to one person and you're all hyped up, and then talk to the person after that and you're exhausted. Introverted, extroverted people are influenced by their environments, by how their environments feel. So have you ever walked into a space and you're like, ooh? You automatically feel like, okay, you automatically feel down, or you walk into a space and like, you're ready to roll, right? So introverted extroverts are definitely influenced by the environments they're in, and also by the people they're around, which is why it's so important that we're careful about that. You can be outgoing while introspective at the same time. So I've been talking to people where I am engaged in conversation, and I'll figure them out by the time we're done. Right? And I figure them out not just from asking questions and from engaging with them, but because I'm also introspective, like there's certain things I can actually pick up. Another secret about me is, so for undergrad, my undergrad degree came from John Jay College of Criminal Justice. And so I got my bachelor's degree in deviant behavior and social control because I wanted to be an FBI profiler. I wanted to work with juveniles who committed violent crimes. So a lot of the classes I took were around personality and how to read people. And so lots of people don't know this, but that's another one of the skills that I've used from my undergrad to kind of figure people out too. Just another one of my little secrets is, had a little profiling skills. So you need to warm up in social situations, which I've said. I am definitely like this. Like I cannot walk into a social situation, or if I have to teach and speak, and just walk in the door and go on stage to speak. I always try to arrive early so I can warm up to the environment and the people. Because I have found that when I go from just walking in the door to automatic engagement or automatic speak, I am not at my best at all. And so I really try to arrive, even if it's just 10 or 15 minutes early. When I go to a social event, when I arrive, I walk around the room, like I have to warm up to people and to the environment before I can begin to get social. You're also selectively social. So introvert, extroverts, you don't mind being social. Like you have some people who anytime they want to go out, you go. And then other people, you're like, what you doing? I don't know how I feel about that today. Or there may be events that you're just not interested in that your friends are, right? And lastly, in a room of strangers, you have nothing to prove. You don't not that you don't care about the room of strangers, whereas an introvert is very withdrawn and in a corner, you have to pull them out. And then extrovert is, they got to work the room. You are somewhat neutral. So you're not withdrawing yourself, but you don't have to be all outgoing. Frankly, you don't really care very much if anyone in the room likes or dislikes you. Part of that is because you selectively choose where you go. You selectively choose how you show up. You ensure that you've warmed up to the room and you've warmed up to people, which means part of that is people watching. So you'll stand in the room and you watch people, watch the dynamics, watch what's going on prior to your engagement. So you are ready now to show up however you need to show up. Hopefully all of that makes some sense. All right, so these are the 3 personalities that we're going to tie into the 4 tips I'm going to give you today. All right, so you have these 3 personalities, but you're scared of networking. And just because you're an extrovert does not mean that you are not, I wouldn't necessarily say fearful. It doesn't mean that you're not a little nervous about networking events, right? Because most of the time when we have networking events, we go because there's something that we think we need to get out of it or something that we want to prove per se. And so anytime you go into a networking event, because people think about networking, oh, you got to meet people. This may be for a job, it may be for your business, and you feel like, what's the point of going if I'm not walking away with something? So today we're going to talk about that. What you walk away with is going to be different for everyone, and that is okay. Okay, number 1, to thine own self be true. Don't show up to a networking event being anyone but you. You have to understand who you are. So we talked about the 3 personalities prior. You have to know which one you are, and you have to be okay with showing up that way. If you're an introvert, it's going to be a long networking event if you try to pretend to be an extrovert. And people are probably going to figure out pretty quickly, right? Those things are hard to hide. If you're an extrovert, it's going to be a long networking event if you try to show up as an introvert. And for the introverted extrovert, if you walk into a situation, a networking event, and after kind of warming up, decide who you're going to be today, and then go against that, that's not going to be a comfortable networking event for you either. So to thine own self be true. The first tip I will ever give you, just in life period, but definitely in networking, is to show up of who you are. People love authenticity. People are seeking out authenticity. In this world where there's someone pretending and acting and all this, people are, Facebook and social media, and people can pretend to be who they want to be. When you meet in person, people are craving for authentic people who are really who they are, right? So show up as yourself. There's someone in that room who will connect with you because they're looking for you, right? Mm-hmm. And then surround yourself with friends and supporters who have varying personalities. I know it's very difficult to do, especially if you're purely an introvert or purely an extrovert. It can be very difficult to have friends who are on either end of the spectrum, but it's important because when you have friends that are on these ends of the spectrum, it gives you a very safe environment to learn skills and to pick up skills that will be helpful for you when you're networking in environments where you don't know anyone, right? So networking or having friends and supporters who have varying personalities, it gives you kind of like that trial run. And then you learn things in probably a very less restrictive and less consequential environment than if you were at a public networking event with people you don't know and you mess up and say something, or you approach an introvert the wrong way, or same thing for an extrovert, right? So surround yourself with friends and supporters. So colleagues, don't have to be your BFFs, but you definitely need to make sure that your network is diversified so that you can become better at networking.
Okay, so sorry to interrupt, but when you in a room and you getting to know other people, right? Mm-hmm. But you notice that the energy and the vibe, some people feel intimidated by them, but how can you lessen that to basically make it seem like there's no need to be intimidated? We want to work together. We want to network. So how can you get across that?
So the first thing I will say is the only person in the room you're responsible for is yourself. That's the only person in the room you're responsible for. So you have to show up, and we'll talk about the question you asked, some strategies will be presented in a little bit. But the first thing I would say is you can't control how other people view you, and you can't control other people being intimidated by you, etc. You can just be yourself. And so the first thing is showing up, like I said. If you're an extrovert, lots of times people, extrovert or introvert, people can still think you're better than them. They may be intimidated by you because of your energy or your experience or what you've accomplished. You can't control that, right? You can't control what other people feel about you. What you can control is how you present yourself and the energy that you bring to the environment. Now, I have walked out of environments where I thought it was toxic for me, because I know myself very well. And if I'm extremely uncomfortable, or I find that I have to fight, and I know this might sound very strange if you're on here and you really don't know like how energy works, but if you're familiar with energy, if you walk into an environment and you have to kind of fight your way to feel comfortable, that makes sense, it's not a healthy environment for you. Where the energy in the room is so combative, or it's heavy, and you're just like, you got to kind of fight your way through to fresh, clean air, for lack of a better word, then it's probably not the right environment for you. Okay. That being said, lots of times introverts or introverted, extroverted people will project. They'll project their own insecurities. They'll project they'll project how they feel onto other people and interpret what somebody says, how they look, how they approach them as one thing when that's not the person's intention. So that's the other thing also to be careful of when you're networking is to be introspective and to be sure that what you are sensing or what you are feeling is really how that person's approaching, and not kind of like your own feelings inside because of however you feel about networking being projected. Does that make sense at all?
Yes, that makes sense.
And that's why another thing that I do when I network, I go with someone else. I go with someone else that I trust. As well, and I'll say, does it feel funny in here, or did that person, and they'll be able to know, Rachel, right? So sometimes also, and I know it's not every event you can go with someone, but sometimes, once again, with surrounding yourself, I'll go with someone else, and if I feel, if I'm questioning kind of my read of the environment or my read of a person, I'll check with that person because I trust their opinion, and then kind of get their feedback. Now, note that their perception of what's going on may be totally different because they're an extrovert and they're just not reading the environment. They just they just walk in there and they're ready to go, where I'm kind of more thoughtful, right? So all of that with a grain of salt. It's also great to go with someone else when you go to a networking event, because I can feedback about the event and what went well, what didn't. Their feeling about it can also be helpful in learning how to understand and how to network with folks of different personalities as well. Mm-hmm. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes,
that's what it sounds like to me.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. Number 2, be ready for small chat and big talk. What does that mean? I am not a small chat person. So small chat is, hey, how are you doing today? How's the weather? Where do you work? Ooh, nice shoes. Where'd you get that? Right? That's small chat. It's kind of like warming up talk that you may have. And it's very typical at networking events to have small chat. And sometimes you can have small chat with 10, 15 people. It's not really a deep conversation. It's just, chit chat here and there. Big talk is when you may start with small chat, but then for whatever reason, there's something that you and the person you're talking to connect with during your small chat, that it turns into what I call big talk, where it turns into a deeper conversation, right? So, I go to an event and we're chit-chatting about, travel and places to stay. And then someone says, oh, I've always wanted to go to Jamaica because my grandparents were from Jamaica and I've always wanted to go there and see the country. And Rachel's like, oh, do you? I'm Jamaican. And then I start talking about the foundation that I have and the work that I do there, right? So that small chat of just about travel has now turned into big talk, where we're connecting over something that was conversed during small chat, right? So big talk is just something that I use. It's not a real thing, but, it's my webinar, so big talk it is. So if you are not really good with small chat, or big talk, because once again, if you're an introvert, you're not really a talker. Or if you're an extrovert, one of the things that you may struggle with still is small chat, because you may not listen as much because you're bouncing from person to person. So even as an extrovert, just being very mindful about being present in conversations and knowing when small chat for the other person has now turned into big talk, and understanding that, and not kind of like, oh, okay, great talking to you, next type of thing, right? Not cool. So one of the things that has worked for me, and I don't carry this list with me, but I do create a list of small talk topics or ways I can introduce myself that are not the typical. So I really got tired of, hi, my name is Rachel Dolcine, what's your name? Even though you have our name badges. Like, hello, but that's kind of one of the ways we introduce ourselves, right? Like, hi, I'm Rachel Dolcine. Hi, I'm Terry Angel. Well, what do you do? Where do you work? Why are you here? After a while, those types of small talk get boring, right? Because you're doing it over and over and over and over and over again. So interesting ways of starting small talk, introducing yourself. This is a list I've gotten from networking over the years. It's a list I have from watching TV shows and movies. I'm like, oh, that was really cool. Or, just talking with folks or watching other people. You don't always have to, even if you're networking around business or professional, you don't always have to start the conversation with where you work or what your business is or what you do, right? Try to find something about that person, and it could be something they have on. It could be something about that's going on in the community. I would stay away from like politics and religion, but depending on what the networking event is about, try to think of something that is outside of just, hi, I'm Rachel, I'm the owner of blah, 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 right? Try to think of other small talk topics that you can use when you're networking. For folks who are introverts, who are forced into networking events, and you have to be social in these events, this will be helpful because in your head, you can have these topics and you don't have to think of something to say. Does that make sense? I hope so. Make mental notes of how and when to exit a conversation that has lost your interest. I cannot begin to tell you, when I first started networking, there were these conversations that went on for what seemed like a lifetime. And I wanted to leave, to walk away, but I didn't know how to exit because the person never had a period. It was all these commas that just kept going and going and going. And the conversation, I will admit, it was an extrovert person I was talking to, but the conversation went on and on and on and on. And that person never recognized my body language, my facial expressions, me shifting from foot to foot, that maybe, I wanted to go, or maybe I'd lost interest. It just kept talking, right? So make mental notes of when, how, and when you want to exit a conversation that has lost your interest. So is it, excuse me, I need to go, let me go grab another drink. Oh, wow, they're serving the food. Let me go grab, ooh, wow, this sandwich is really good. Let me go get another one. Or it was so great talking to you. Let me catch up with you later in this event. There's a few people that I want to connect with, right? How do you have to have that in your head when you get to a networking event, because it's going to happen. It always happens where you're talking with someone and you now want to move on to someone else, or the conversation has lost your interest. And then practice. How do you practice small talk? You practice it with your kids. You practice it with your husband. You practice it with your friends and your coworkers. And no, you don't say, okay, guys, it's small chat time or big talk time. No, you kind of work it into your daily conversations that you have with people. Some of the best folks to have practice small chat and big talk with is actually your kids and your husband or your boyfriend. First of all, they're normally your hardest critics. They're normally the hardest, well, at least middle schoolers and high school kids, to engage in conversation. So practicing with them, I mean, they obviously, like I said, you're not saying, okay, guys, it's small chat time, but practicing with them with the whole small chat when the kids get in the car after school, when your husband comes home from work. At the end of the day, when you and him are, or your boyfriend or significant other, whomever, when you're coming down from the day, and just having some of these small talk topics that you've come up with in your head, practice on them, right? And get feedback from them. Practice is really important. And I know that it sounds like really crazy, but anything in life, Practice. Stand in front of the mirror and look at your facial expressions when you say certain things. Yes, I do that. Because one of the things that I've learned from networking and from being in leadership in a very long time is that I don't have a poker face. And so people will look at my facial expressions and get something totally different than what I'm trying to say, or they won't even focus on the words coming out of my mouth because they're looking at my facial expression, or my facial expression will give away how I really feel, or my facial expression can seem non-approachable or intimidating to some folks. So I spent some time when I was in my 20s and early 30s, and I would practice in front of the mirror. I would practice when I had to speak. I would practice pretend I was going up to someone, and I would watch my facial expressions as I said certain things. Right? So practice, practice, practice. I am not of the persuasion that practice makes perfect, because I don't think you can be perfect at anything, but practice makes better. Practice makes you comfortable. Practice empowers you. Practice makes you prepared. Right? And that is all you can aim to be when you go into networking events. Any questions about number 2? Okay. Number 3, make a plan before the networking event. And this is for any personality type. You have to know, what do you want to get out of the event? Is there someone specific you want to meet? And what's your exit strategy? Yes, you need an exit strategy. You know, one of the questions that Camille just asked about, what if you're sensing a certain type of energy from someone or even from the event, then what do you do? Right? And so I talked about, controlling, you can only control your own self, what energy you bring to the table, not projecting, but one of them could simply be you leave, right? And so what's your exit strategy? And that's for any personality type, and it's for any point during a networking event. So if you need to exit a networking event, how are you going to do that? One of the things that I do is I make sure that as I'm working the room, and I know it sounds, but this is what works for me because I'm an introverted extrovert and I'm mostly introvert. So I'm always ready to run from a networking event. Is as I move around the room, I always glance to see where the door is, right? Part of it may also be because my husband's a cop and he makes us do this every time we go somewhere. But I always glance to see where the door is. For whatever reason, that makes me comfortable. It makes me comfortable to know, okay, the door is right, the door is over there. This is how I need to get to the door and I can get out. Like for whatever reason, that makes me feel comfortable when I'm at a networking event where I may not feel exactly at ease. Right? So before I go to a networking event, I always think of one thing that I want to get out of the networking event. Just one thing, not 2, not 3, not 4. One thing. If you get to the networking event and you get 10 things out of it, that's great. But my challenge is think of one thing that you want to get out of this event. It can be, I want to get more information about X, Y, and Z. It can be, I want to, just spend $30. It might be, I want to make 5 connections. It might be, I want to make sure when they ask for folks to share about their business that I stand up and I say something, right? So what do you want out of the event? Then is there someone specific you want to meet? So sometimes with networking events, they may have a panel, or they may have some speakers, or they may even share who's coming. It may not be someone's, like it may not be racial, but it might be, it might be, we're going to have someone who has a thriving retail business, or someone who has a thriving nonprofit, or someone who's traveled to 50 countries, right? So it may not be a name, but there may be someone specific that you want to meet because the information they may have or the connection they may have may be helpful for you. So one person as well. So one thing you want to get out of the event, and then one person. Every networking event that you attend, and this is my challenge to you because this is how I've challenged myself and it has worked. Every single network event that I attend, I tell myself that there is one person, I need to walk away with one meaningful connection. One, just one, not 2, not 3. That means that I may have to talk to 4 or 5 people. And in the next slide, I kind of tell you how I accomplished that for myself. But set a goal, make a plan, because when you make a plan before you go to networking events, you can walk out of it with a more meaningful experience. Also, you can gauge whether or not this networking event was worth it for you. So if you just go into networking events to go, I would not recommend that. It doesn't matter what personality type you are. Everything that you do in your life, every time energy that's spent doing something, meeting someone, should have some type of connection or impact on your own life, whether it's professionally or personally. Willy-nilly going about, oh, I'm just going to go here because this looks good. I'm going to go there because that looks good. Now, as adults, we gotta have these meaningful, the word is not intentional is the word I'm trying to find. Be very intentional about where you go and who you connect with, right? Because networking, as much as it is about people and making connections and building your brand, building your business, building your personal brand, advancing your career. It's also about exchange of information and exchange of energy. And you want to make sure, and the use of time, right? And you want to make sure that use of time, exchange of information, and that exchanging of energy is meaningful to your life. So make a plan before a networking event. It doesn't have to be a long, elaborate plan. It can be these 3 questions. That's it. Have answers to these 3 questions, and you can go into a networking event and you can walk out of it with a meaningful experience. Any questions about number 3? Okay. Number 4, now I know that, you have attack. I have the words like attack and plan and whatever the case is. That's okay. I'm a strategic planner. Like my brain functions strategically. So when I use these words, it's just a function of my brain. All right. So create a plan of attack for the event. Right. So you've done number 3, which is before you attend the networking event, you've set your mind. You have a mindset about what you're hoping to get out of this event. Once you get to the event, how are you going to accomplish what you set in number 3? Some of these I've already talked about before. 1 meaningful contact. You don't need to leave a networking event with 10 contacts. Now that's great. I'm not saying don't. That's great. But I think if you walk into it, what has worked for me is when I walk into a room saying I want to leave with 1 meaningful contact, it makes me more intentional. It makes me more focused in my networking. And so if there's 100 people there, could Rachel talk to the 100 people in the room? Yes, I don't want to. I normally don't. But what it does for me when I say I need 1 out of this 100 to walk away with, it makes me more intentional when I walk into that room. It also makes me more confident. I have found that when I have said that, I walk into a room more confident. I'm less, what is wrong with my list today? I am less withdrawn, and I am more willing to engage with folks after I've warmed up, because I know that I'm just looking for 1 contact. I have a plan. I'm not just walking into that room, willy-nilly. Like, I have a plan. Whenever I arrive, I take a good few minutes. I could take a few minutes to take a good view of the land, quote unquote, before talking to anyone. So I may walk around the room just to see where everyone is, kind of look at, like, people watching. No, it's not creepy. It's actually very useful. So I may walk around the room, see where the food is, the stage is, and just kind of walk around to see, what's what, who's there. Do I see if it was an event where they showed pictures of who was going to attend? Do I see somebody I recognize? I just kind of walk around the room, once again, look to where the exit is, because also that's good for emergencies. But I kind of look to see where everyone is. I also look to see, is there anyone in this room that's kind of by themselves? In a corner, sitting at a table alone, maybe involved in a conversation, but I can see that they're kind of drifting off or they're looking elsewhere. Is there someone whose eyes I connect with? I can say, oh, hi. You're right. So I kind of walk around the room to get a good feel. And then once I've done that, I identify a person that I would like to start a conversation with. And I go and I have that conversation. Now, when I walk into networking events, because I have this plan, I don't need to wait for someone to come up and approach me. I am more confident after I've warmed up. Because remember, I'm an introverted extrovert, so I gotta check out the room, warm up my engines. After I've done that, the last maybe 5 or 6 networking events I've been to, I've been the one who walked up to someone and initiated a conversation. And it's made me feel so good. I'm like, yay, I'm getting this. I'm learning this. So it's really been encouraging for me to do that. And the reason why I think I've been successful is because I don't just jump into this networking experience. I'm very intentional and I have a plan around it when I do it. To identify the person, or you may pick a spot that you want to stand in, and you may shift that spot throughout the event, but you pick a spot you want to stand in because of how the crowd is flowing, or maybe there's someone that you kind of like, okay, I would like to go talk to them. You don't kind of know why, but it's just like, I'm gonna go talk to them until you kind of position yourself. So when that person passes by, when they finish your conversation, you can kind of, reach out and introduce yourself. It could be someone who's sitting at a table by themselves. It could be someone who's standing alone. So one of the things about introverts is not that they don't want to talk, right? It may be that they don't know how to talk, or that your personality is just not one to initiate a conversation. But I have met lots of pure introverts who I have great, sometimes I spend the entire event just talking to them, just having a great conversation with them. So, initiating a conversation, regardless of your personality type, can really be a wonderful way, putting yourself out there to engage with someone that you normally would not engage with. And those are my 4 tips. Any questions?
Yes, I actually do have a question. So as far as, okay, so if you're an introvert or extrovert, what's your feedback on alcohol at these events? Do you think they should have a sip or something to sort of get themselves in the mood, or do you think they should not, so they can have a clear mind? What's your suggestion?
So I'm trying to think of me. Well, I'm an introvert extrovert, so I guess it's kind of different. So I think having a drink and sipping on a drink can be a very relaxing and a way to kind of control your anxiety, not because of the alcohol itself, or because you actually have something in your hand. It doesn't even have to be an alcoholic drink. It can be just any kind of drink. I think that helps with kind of calming anxiety. I think when it comes to alcohol specifically, you have to know yourself, right? And you have to know kind of how alcohol affects you when it comes into certain situations. So for me, if I'm highly anxious, I can't drink, because alcohol for me will increase my increases my anxiety, because I feel first of all, I'm a lightweight, so I feel less in control when I'm drinking at a networking event at which I have high anxiety. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Sorry, I was on mute.
Yeah. So I think when it comes to alcohol, I think it's really understanding who you are. There are extroverts I know who do not drink alcohol when they go to social events because they're extroverted enough, and alcohol just makes them seem extra obnoxious.
Yeah.
And so they don't do it. And then there are people who don't know themselves, and so they drink and you're like, oh my goodness, this person's just out of control. Or, we have friends like, oh my God, okay, that's one beer. If she drinks another, we're like, no more beer for you. So I think alcohol really depends on where you are, and once again, how is that alcohol helping you to achieve what you came here for? If that makes sense at all.
No, that makes sense. It does.
Yeah. So, yeah.
But I feel like when I have to go to a networking event, I gotta have at least 1 glass, and I feel it, makes me comfortable, and that's when I'll be more open. I'll be able to talk more. But if I don't have 1 glass, I'm just gonna stay quiet to the corner.
Yeah, we kind of warm up a little bit.
Yeah, and everybody's different, and that's why I said that you really have to know how alcohol affects you in these particular situations, and then act accordingly. Because for some people, it's a way to calm down. For others, it intensifies, and for others, they lose control even after just. Yeah. So I think it really depends on. And then, are you drinking the whole glass, or are you just kind of sipping? Sipping type of. Yeah. So that whole thing when you're anxious, doing something. So helps to kind of calm. And so sipping is actually something that you can do to kind of calm. The sipping in itself maybe what's more beneficial than the alcohol itself.
Right. Right.
Just kind of having that glass and being able to hold it and then just sipping, the nervous tics type of thing. So everyone it's different.
And you know what? And I found it because there's a couple of networking events that I went to recently, and I chose not to have anything to drink. Because typically I will have something to drink, but I chose not to have anything to drink. And it's interesting to also see how, it's interesting to see how other people sort of react when they have their drink, or when they start to slowly, from the beginning of the night, and then you're not having anything to drink, you're able to really be present and really notice people's demeanors and shifts and stuff like that too. So it's, again, like you said, it's all about knowing your limits and knowing.
Yes, definitely. And for what I've found, and this is just from my own observations, because once again, when you're introvert or introvert extrovert, you tend to be more observant. I find that extroverts have to work a lot harder to be intentional and to be aware of other people's reactions and how they're coming off to people. Because they're social butterflies. Like, they're not, they're all about life of the party, making people feel good. And it's harder for them to stop because they're moving so fast and read facial expressions, read body language. You're coming off too strong, extrovert. Can you back up a little bit? You're in my space. Or I'm not interested in what you're saying. Can you leave now? Type. I found that sometimes it's harder with that. And then on the flip side, though, it can be painful to engage an introvert in a conversation. Which is why I think when you set goals before you go to a networking event, I think it helps to keep you focused on why you're there and what you're there for. And I think it helps to tame some of the extreme type of personality traits that any one of these three personality characteristics can have.
Absolutely. So. And another question I have too is around follow-up. So if, depending on the personality type, maybe with introvert, you may have made some good connections, but as far as when you follow up, it may take a little bit more time to follow up with people. Extrovert might follow up too quickly, or for me, sometimes I'm in between. I'll have a connection, and then I still may take a little long to follow up with the person. What do you suggest? What's the best, way to follow up with people?
And now that I'm thinking, I'm like, that's a good point. I should have had a fifth tip about follow up. I'm just thinking about the event itself. So I agree. So I actually have an electronic card. So I created it on Canva. And so when I go to an event and I meet someone, I'm like, you know what? I would love to follow up with you after this event. I immediately send them a text. And they're like, oh, can I get a card? I'm like, I have an electronic card. And so that is a conversation that happens. And so I send them a text. And so in my head, my follow-up has already been completed.
Got you.
So I don't feel, I don't feel pressured. Oh my goodness, I have 15 cards and I got to follow. I've done all that before I leave the event. And then what I found is that those folks then respond maybe the next day or 2 days later, and it helps to manage that. Oh my goodness, I met 50 people tonight. I don't want to text these or email these people at all for like a week, because I'm still trying to get over this kind of networking event. Yeah. So I found that doing that during the event, and not with everyone, is someone that, once again, my goal is a connection. So it's someone that I feel like, okay, I've kind of gotten a connection with. Otherwise, I'll take someone's card. And I know. I don't follow up with them.
How many days do you wait before you follow up?
Well, I do the follow up. What I've done now for myself, because I know myself well, and once I leave the event, my introvert kicks in. So I do it in the event, because if I don't, I may never. And there may be meaningful connections that I really want to connect with, but that introvert, after an event, I'm exhausted. Like, I don't want to see people. I don't want to talk to you. Leave me alone. And so what I find is, if I don't do that connection right there while I have that energy of, normally I would say between 24 and 48 hours is I think a good follow-up time. But I found that sometimes I wasn't following up with people for like a month. A friend of mine was like, try this electronic card, and if you go and you meet someone, just immediately do it. Say, hey, it was so great to meet you tonight, blah, blah, blah. Just do it right then and there. I'm still standing with them. And I'm like, you got it? Like, yeah, this is so cool. Like, oh, I love your electronic card. And, oh my goodness, you wrote a book, and it's a whole other conversation. But I'm like, okay, I've done it. Whew. And
the ball's in their court at that point.
And the ball's now in their court. And I've always had people follow up. The last 6 or 7 events I've been to, and I've done that, people have followed up to say, let's do lunch. It was great meeting you too. Let's stay in touch. Or I've gotten an email follow up. So it's worked for me. Yeah, because if not, you never, unless you see Rachel again.
Hear from her.
No.
I can so relate to that.
Because I'm like, networking is done.
It can be exhausting too. I can completely relate to that, especially if you're putting on the event. Like you said, if you're the host of the event you have to be at 100 the whole time and meeting people and engaging, but then at the same time being introspective and being able to connect with folks and, know when you need to shift. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And
it's exhausting.
At the end of the day, like,
yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
But I think this conversation, not just networking, I'm hoping will also help young professionals who are watching this, even in your professional life, because you may have a boss who falls in one of those personalities. And so your meetings at work, I used to look at those as networking events. I mean, I know my coworkers, but this, once again, practicing and building those skills. So you might have a boss or your meeting at work, your monthly Monday meeting. If you change the mindset of what those are and how to look at them, these are also some skills that we talked about today that are don't just apply to networking. They can apply to any kind of business or professional relationship that you're trying to build, that you're trying to have in life as well. So these are really life skills, not necessarily networking or business. These are life skills that you can use across various areas in your life.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you made that distinction too, because even if, especially when I go back to my thing about alcohol and networking events, it's when you shift it and it's a place where it's your place of business and there's a different, power shift there where you might have a boss or supervisor or other people you work with who you may not, you may or may not have the best working relationship with, just to be mindful of what you consume. To be mindful of what you consume, because sometimes people will wait again until you have something to drink and then they're feel more comfortable with it could be a setup. So just be mindful of in those spaces. But
absolutely. Hi, Jamal.
Hey. He's spying on us.
I know.
And he's a guru networker. Okay. So
listen, I've been multitasking and listening in for at least the majority of the hour.
Oh, thanks, Molly.
So, yeah.
Okay. So you think my tips were valid?
Yes.
Okay.
Because we already knew that.
Guru networker.
I mean, and taking my space out of being an expert, because I mean, I think we're all experts at our own key things, niche things. I recognize myself as that introverted extrovert.
That's real.
And I mean, my thing and what I've put in a lot of my contracts recently is I don't mind having a meet and greet afterwards. I don't mind talking to participants. I don't mind that stuff, but I need 10 minutes after. I mean, I'm done. I need
to recenter.
I need this time to because if I don't, I'm gonna tell you, I'm really gonna tell you off, and it's not gonna be good. It's not necessarily telling you off because I want to be mean. It's because I need to like do a quick Tesla recharge, and I just
that's
I need
important.
that.
That's important.
In my elder age, that's things I recognize. If I don't have that, then I'm not. And Lita, you said it. I'm not. I won't be 100.
No.
But would you rather me be at 80% or would you rather me be at 5%?
Right.
Those are two different.
And they'll soon find out.
Those are two different people.
Yes.
And I know this. I know this about me, Rachel. You said it pretty much the whole hour. And I think the key that people need to take away, and I know this is being recorded, from everything she said was, I know myself.
Yep. Know thyself.
I know myself, so I know what I can do. I know what I can, what I can handle. Even when you talk about, you brought up about alcohol and drinking at networking events. Listen, I threw parties for years.
And never drank?
No. I didn't drink until after the party was done, which was when we were counting up money and people left the club. Because your head had to be on a swivel, and dealing with those types of liabilities is different. So I never wanted to be that host that couldn't either remember what happened or didn't know who I was talking to. At that point, it's really not about me. It's about how do you connect with people.
Absolutely.
Afterwards.
Absolutely.
I know.
That's a whole nother story.
Afterwards,
but Camille.
After party and the hotel lobby and
right. Take you on a stretcher.
And after the original was probably this.
Okay. I can't with you. I cannot. I will not.
Listen, I had to throw it.
But no. But and I just wanna, because out of interest of time too, I wanna thank Rachel for taking the time out of your schedule, for giving us your expertise. And I think what I got from one of the many things that I got from your message is show up as yourself, know who you are and stick with that. If you're an introvert, be introverted. If you're an extrovert, be extroverted. If you're a little bit of both, then go in there prepared, knowing who you are, what the purpose is that you're going to be there for, and then the follow up, because the whole point is to expand your network. Right, and get to the next level, and that one person that you meet at that event could really change things for you for the rest of your life, right?
Yes.
We all can attest to, just like how I met you, Rachel. It's been a year, but it feels like it's been longer than that. And right after, you followed me right after you took a selfie, and then we had lunch scheduled the next week or something. It's like sometimes, when you're present and you're there and you go with it, like you said, the introspection piece, you can make some of the best connections. So I thank you for sharing that with us. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. As you know, this is live for our FCN Foundation members. And if you're watching a recording of this, then I encourage you to join as a member. Don't be scared. You don't necessarily have to be an alumni of foster care. You can be a non-alumni, right? Maybe you just work in the field. Maybe you're a researcher. Maybe you just want to connect with people who've been in the foster care system. You can join as a member as well. If you are a part of an organization, an agency, a company that works with young adults in and from foster care, you can become a member as well. In addition to our monthly webinars like this, we have our monthly networking event, which Rachel is hosting this Thursday, the 21st. Whoop, whoop. And Maryland nonprofits. It's called Fall in Love with Success. And we've got some people registered. We got people from Banks registered, somebody from the Red Cross is registered, somebody from Baltimore City Community College. We have people, no pressure, because she does this. This is her thing, right? Oh. So I'm excited about that. So we do things like that. So I encourage you to join as a member, see what we're about, and come out and connect with us. And I hope to see all of you there. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Camille. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And we'll see you next month, third Tuesday in the month. And actually, at that point, we will have Kimberly coming to talk about, Kimberly Ryan, who is our education and career specialist. But she's going to be talking about what's your plan for your whole self for 2020. Taking care of yourself. What does that look like? And how do you take care of yourself around the holidays when, some of us, this is not a great time for us. How do you get through it? All right. So I'll see y'all then. Bye. Be blessed, y'all. Bye.
Bye.